All right, folks, welcome to the Strong for Life podcast. I'm joined by John Caprani, and
Mhm.
John is a direct marketing consultant from Ireland as well. I was put on to John from Keith, or I
Yeah.
think it was Mike Samuels, maybe put me on to you. I wasn't one of the two guys, but it's funny, mate. I didn't know anything about your stuff, but I really just trust you and like what you put out. So I think that would
Mhm.
be a good thing to talk about, maybe online networking, content. But before we jump into that, can you give a bit of background who you are and how you got into direct marketing?
Sure. Okay. Hey, Connor. Thanks for having me on your podcast today. So, who am I? Oh God, that's I don't need to. That's a philosophical question. That would be an ecumenical matter, right? Um, I started out in marketing to a kind of side way. I used to be into craftsmanship. I was like woodworker. I used to build boats and furniture and all kinds of stuff. And then I got into the construction industry. And after a few years in construction industry, I was doing resort development work, like building fancy beach houses. And it just got to be all a bit much. It was dusty, it was dirty, I was managing teams of 30 guys. It just got to be a real pain in the ass. I'd had enough. I said, okay, I need to do something different. So around that time, I'd learned a little bit about copywriting because my job had started to evolve from project site manager into somebody who was doing the sales. And I had to learn how to communicate with clients. A lot of the clients would be overseas. They wouldn't be living in the house we were building. They'd be in Australia or something, and we'd be building that house for them remotely. So I had to learn a little bit about communication. So I started to read books about copywriting. And at the end of 2018, I was living with my wife over in Fiji at the time. We decided we'd come back to Ireland to get our kids educated. And we needed to do something that would let me have that flexibility. I could move. And I said, now's the time to get out of construction. Now's the time to move into something that's online so that even if we don't stay in Ireland forever, if we decide to move again, my career won't be based on my where I am stuck to one place. I have the freedom to travel. And that was the reason I decided to pick this industry. Left my job in end of 2018, got my first client in early 2019, doing copywriting. And that's kind of where I've been, like just developing my skills the past 5 years.
Nice, mate. Can you explain direct marketing?
Okay, so I think what most people would think of as marketing sort of would be more of what we would call brand marketing. So, there's lots of different ways to split up marketing, and we don't need to get into all the finer details today. But the two big ones would be probably brand marketing and direct marketing. And brand marketing is what bigger businesses use. That's Coca-Cola, that's an Apple, a Nike, where the company doesn't necessarily have a direct one-to-one relationship with its customer, and it has to create messaging that can speak to people on a mass scale, where people can become interested in the company and its products just through the image it creates for itself, through its advertising, and how it presents its products in on TV, in movies, all sorts of other things. And brand marketing is very powerful, but most businesses don't have the budget to do it. So when a smaller business talks about having a brand, they don't really. You don't really have a brand until people who aren't even your customers know about you, and on a very mass scale. So for smaller businesses, the way to get going is really what we call direct marketing, where you're trying to reach out and build a one-to-one connection with your customer, which is whether by sending them to a website and getting them to click in, fill a form and put in their email address so you can start to put them on your mailing list and send them emails, or that can be stuff like having people sent when they buy a product, having them put on a physical mailing list where stuff comes out in the post to them, the mail we all get in the door. And those would be the two main ones. And then via social media, there are other ways like via chat. But the key thing with direct marketing is really that it's the way for a smaller business to be able to do marketing with a lower budget by really just directly connecting with the people who are potential customers and looking for the sale right away. And just to kind of think about that in a little bit more detail, I am I love Apple computer. I have an Apple laptop, I have an Apple phone here, but I didn't always use Apple products. I probably started using Apple stuff about 3, 4 years ago. Before that, I always used like Lenovo. Now, Apple is a big enough company where, I started working around 25, around 16, 17 years ago, and I only got into buying Apple stuff about 3 years ago. So Apple was able to wait 14 years for me to be a customer because they're such a big company, because they have the budget to do that, to market on a mass scale until I'm ready to buy. But with a smaller business, they can't wait long for their customers to be able to find out about the ready to buy. So they have to market directly. They have to put out the direct message using typically online advertising, email marketing, maybe local media as well, and get people to make a direct contact with them so they can sell them a product.
Got it. Yeah. You know, the fitness industry is really interesting because maybe it's actually small business statistics in general. There's like an 80% failure rate in the first 5 years, and that's PT as well. And a big mindset I find with personal trainers, maybe you see it in other businesses as well, is like, I don't want to do the marketing or the sales. That's kind of, I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to, you know, people should just come because the product is good enough, and I don't want to be scamming people. That's also the way I felt. And now the more I focus on sales and marketing and copywriting, it's just like everything gets better. Like you can help more people. You can do a better job. I can do better service for people. Do you find that that's a common mindset in other industries as well, outside of fitness?
I think it's pretty much across the board. People who get into entrepreneurship after being an employee, they don't realize it, most people don't realize until they have a business and there's pressure to pay bills every month or to cover a payroll. They don't realize how much that sales and marketing is the key business activity. And it's to an extent where you can almost outsource everything in your business besides the sales and marketing, and that really is the business. Like even for you, you're in the fitness business, you are a trainer and a coach, but the bigger as your business grows, you may not be able to serve every single client of your business directly yourself. You may have to build a team, you may have to hire other coaches, and then you are setting the direction, maybe creating the overall shape of the business and the philosophy that the other coaches bring when they do the one-to-one work direct to the clients. But your responsibility as a business owner is, how do I find customers? How do I put the message out there? How do I get people in the door talking to us? And how do I actually turn that interest into sales? Because without that, you don't have a business at all. The only thing that really matters in any business is actually keeping it going, basically keeping the lights on. And that doesn't happen unless the owner is focused on sales and marketing. There's a very famous book in entrepreneurial circles called the E-Myth. And the E-Myth is kind of about somebody who's a great technician, but doesn't know how to be a business person. And this is a very, very common story with entrepreneurs. Somebody who is great at a particular craft or skill, loves it, wants to build a business around it, starts to build a business around it, and quickly comes to realize that being great at their chosen skill is only about 10% of what it's going to take to build that business. And the rest is all understanding marketing and sales, and also the customer life cycle as well.
You moved fully on your own, was it 2019?
Yeah, I left my last job about just end of 2018.
If you kind of reflect now, we're looking at like 5, maybe even nearly 6 years. What were some of the mistakes you made in that process? In hindsight, if you had known better, might have made it easier.
I made that mistake, the one I just talked about, being more focused on getting better at the skill I was delivering than on actually the sales and marketing aspect. And I quickly learned you're going to have to get out there and find and put your message out there, or you're going to die. It's like, not metaphorically, not literally. When COVID hit, let me roll back. When I started, I had a little bit of one or two clients. I was in networking has been my kind of best way to get business over the last 5-6 years. So I had one or two clients, but I quickly realized that I wasn't sustainable. I was making just enough money to kind of keep us fed, and that wasn't going to be sustainable long term. I have a wife, I have 2 children, and I took a big step down in income from when I'd been working for a company and everything was taken care of. yeah, the instability was very, very hard to deal with. Like psychologically, looking at the bank balance, sometimes there's money coming in, sometimes nothing coming in for weeks. And I came to the realization that, I need to do something. I need to put my message out there. I need people to know about me. I need to have a reputation. Or if I don't get known in my industry, I'm dead in the water. I'm not going to survive. And it took me about a year to figure that out. I really should have been, in hindsight, like set on that from day one. Um, Other mistakes I made as well, I think, was trying to do everything myself for such a long time. I mean, I really, when I got into doing marketing, it was kind of a reaction against what I've been doing construction, where I was managing crews and all that. I was just really burned out and sick of it all, and wanted to just do stuff that was alone. And I just worked as a kind of solopreneur, like freelancer, service provider for the first couple of years. And I've now come around to a different way of thinking, that I understand that no matter whether you're working for yourself, whether you're running a company or whether you're an employee, you're always in some sort of collaborative enterprise. It's just there's different forms that collaboration takes, and that the more you can, bring in other people into what you do, get other people to help you, and take advantage in the best possible sense of other people's knowledge and expertise, the easier it is to make progress yourself.
That's such such great advice, man. It's like that's exactly what we're doing now. I'm talking to you about marketing. You're teaching me about marketing. Um, and you put up a post about this about podcasting last week, which is really kind of hits the nail on the head with this. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of the times there's a maybe it's like like why would I interview other people who are my competitors? That doesn't make any sense. Or
Yes.
and like the word you said there, collaboration, is just it's the key. Like because there's just an overabundance of people that need help with pretty much most industries. But like for you, everyone needs more help with marketing. Walk outside, everyone needs more help with fitness. You can see that right away on any major town or city in the Western world. But there is a scarcity mentality that if I give other coaches a platform or talk to other coaches, then they're going to steal all my clients.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the podcast has been like the best thing I could have done, because I've networked with loads of amazing coaches and people in different industries, and it's just like a net positive. Do you think that you'd be able to harness that mindset from the get-go, or do you think that's something you need to just go through and then have perspective when things are kind of more settled in the business?
Okay, so I'm just writing some notes based on what you said, because there was a few different points you touched on there. Um,
Mm,
First off, let's talk about the podcast. And the reason I'm podcasting, I have my own podcast as well. Why are podcasts so valuable? Because educated people listen to podcasts. Podcast listeners tend to have above average incomes and be like people who spend more money, which is really great for you as a business owner. You want those type of people as customers. What else is good at a podcast? It lets you build your reputation and get known. Um, and it also puts you as the host in a position of assumed authority. If you put 20 people in a room, it doesn't take long before somebody stands up on a box and start telling people what to do. And very quickly, everyone comes to just acknowledge that person as the leader. And podcasting kind of does that on a smaller scale. You put yourself in a position where you're interviewing someone, and it makes you appear authoritative to anybody who happens to see that podcast and listen to it. Everyone tends to think that people who talk the most are the ones who have power and influence. But if you've ever gone for a job and thought about the situation where you're the one who's expected to speak and the other person's asking the questions, and you feel awkward about it sometimes in a job interview situation, the person who asks the questions is the one who has the power in most conversations. So putting yourself in that position is very good for building up your reputation and your other people's perception of your authority in your expertise. And reputation is kind of the old word for what is now more fashionably known as your personal brand online. And social media is driving this. You have to have a personality that people recognize as an individual. People want the personal now more than ever before. They always did. And I can give some examples of that. I have a client who's in a kind of very mature industry, kind of a boring industry. He's in industry to do with recycling. And it's not very sexy, it's not very interesting, but the businesses in that industry, like they make a lot of money and he's doing pretty well. But for years, he was trying to promote his business on the basis of his company's name and build up the name of his company. But he'd along the way picked up a gig as a columnist in a trade journal. And then he got talking to me, and I've been helping him out with his marketing. I was like, hey, look, you've got this columnist in a prestigious trade journal, and everybody knows you as an individual, but nobody knows the name of your company. So why do you keep promoting your company instead of promoting yourself? And he's like, yeah, you're right. Maybe you're right. And then we were talking a few days ago, and he said, hey, John, I just came back from a conference in Chicago. And so many people came up to me and said, hey, Sam, I've been reading your column for years or for months. And he said, it really surprised me. They all know me, but none of them know my company. It's like, yeah, see, there you go. It's you, it's your personality that they want. And if nowadays, if you want to build yourself up as a business person, I think you have to promote yourself as an individual and your personality and people's engagement with your personality through social media first, and then use that personal brand as a platform to grow your business. Another really great example in an Irish context, and I wrote about her recently. There's a woman named Nadia Adan. She's a
Saw
car
that,
dealer,
yeah.
Ashford
Yeah,
Motors, and Nadia is just brilliant. She's such a clever woman. She um, came out. Everyone's been, it's been so fashionable to talk about the virtues of electric cars a couple of years, and she came out very publicly and said this year, hey, I'm no longer accepting electric cars as trade-ins at my dealership because the used values of these vehicles are so uncertain, and it's harder to sell them used, and there's a lot of concerns about the longevity of the batteries and all those things. She came out really strong against it. So she took this really controversial position in her industry, and she got a lot of criticism for that, but it really raised her profile. And she was already going, because she's a good self-promoter, she's a good marketer, she was already growing, but she's really blown up since she did this. She's on national news all the time now. She's on radio every week. Whenever someone has a conversation about electric cars now, she has to be part of the conversation because she's one of the most controversial opinions in that car dealership space, which is really brilliant for her. And that's all her personal brand. But what does it do? It gives her a platform and free publicity. Like the amount of publicity she's gotten this year from talking about electric cars in that controversial way, you would pay millions to Facebook or Google on advertising to get that level of publicity for your business, and she's gotten it all for free just by being clever and being a good self promoter.
yeah, man. This is actually what I want to go into with you now. Well, first thing, just on the authority building process of like being like hosting a podcast. I remember when I first started, I was just doing kind of Facebook Lives with other coaches. And my brother was like, yeah, it makes you look really good, man. It makes you look like an authority. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like they just kind of clicked, you know? But you just touched on a really good thing there on like polarizing content in marketing and having like a very strong stance, and then people tend to rally behind you as the person who has the bravery to go forwards. I'd love to dive into that a bit more, and also how you thread the needle ethically with that line as well. I think there's lots of kind of fitness examples, like Liver King would be a perfect example of like someone who's just like ultimate polarizing figure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, mate, because I think that's something I struggle with still, is just like, not upsetting people, but then, not being super strong in the beliefs either. It's something I'm leaning into more, but I'd love to hear like how you work with clients along that process.
Okay, sure. Before I get to that, I realized I didn't actually answer the question you asked me last time. You asked me about the scarcity mindset, about talking to your competitors and bringing your competitors
Yep.
into your business, and even in some sense, even promoting your competitors. So that's something really interesting because that's a challenge I've had lately. So the thing is that when you get to a certain point in your business, and you're probably there, where there's people who come to you, Connor, where I'm actually not the best person to help this person, and they are not necessarily the ideal client for me. We're basically early on in the process of being an entrepreneur. You think, I need to get every customer I can, gotta catch them all like Pokemon. And then after a while, you realize, hey, some of these customers have been great customers for me. They've stayed with me a long time. I've made good money with them, and we've been able to get a great results for them at the same time. And these people are perfect because I can turn them into a case study or get a testimonial for them and use them to promote myself going forward. And then other types of customers say, this customer is not the right type of customer for me. They didn't stay with me very long. Their needs were outside of the scope of my expertise, so I wasn't able to get them a great result. And I don't feel particularly happy that I wasn't able to satisfy them as a customer too. And if that type of customer comes to me again, they're probably not the right fit for my business. And we've all got that. Anyone who's got a business has that. Some customers are a great fit, and some customers, they're not bad people, they're not bad customers, they're just not the right fit for your business. So, if you're somebody, for example, as a coach who helps people get ready for a bodybuilding show, and somebody comes in who has completely different challenges, maybe, somebody who's needs to lose 200 pounds because they've let their weight creep over years. As a bodybuilding coach, you're probably not the perfect person to help them out. So you need to not always take every client you can get. I have a client at the moment who has a business, and they are in the catering industry, but they don't cater small events. They can't actually profitably cater an event with less than 50 guests, and their ideal event size is 100 to 200 guests. If it's above 200, it actually starts to be a problem too, because again, they can't cater for those bigger events either. So their sweet spot is 50 to 200 guests. Now, when the problem they've been having is they get a lot of interest for events that are 20 to 30 guests that they can't service, and right now they know it's too small for me. I've been trying to explain to them, hey, just because you can't serve that customer doesn't mean that that's a dead customer. The perfect situation for them is find another catering business that's smaller than them and make them your referral partner. Say, hey, I've been getting these gigs coming in, and they don't fit my business. They're just a little bit smaller than I can actually profitably serve. But you guys are probably in the right position to help them out. Start giving those as referrals, those smaller gigs, to somebody else who can actually better serve them. Ideally, someone who's in your geographical area and is, in some sense, maybe a competitor. And then for that same client, if a gig comes in for a catering gig for 500 people, they can't serve that 500 people gig. Okay, no problem. Find a bigger catering company, also in the same geographical area, who's better fit for them. Send that referral their way. Now, you can reach out to those companies and do a referral partnership where they pay you a fee. That's one way. But sometimes it's better just to give referrals and actually build a relationship with them, because guaranteed those two companies will have gigs that are outside. The bigger company will have small gigs, 100, 200 person gigs that they say, these are too small for us. We can't serve them. They will start to send the referrals back to you that aren't fit for them, but are fit for you. And the same with the smaller business. And this is why, even if these people are in some sense your competitors, there's always businesses that just are a perfect fit for you, not a perfect for them, that they can refer to you, and vice versa. Businesses that come to, because customers that come that are not a perfect fit for you, but can be great for those other businesses, and you can all actually benefit. It becomes win-win, because you're having to pay for the leads anyway. Like, my client pays me for advertising. There's no reason why he shouldn't get some benefit off those leads, even if it's one he can't directly serve.
Yeah.
And that scarcity mentality, though, is hard for entrepreneurs to get over. But once they do, and they start to think, hey, there's more than enough to go around, and I don't have to win every bit of business, and I can refer this out, and there's a long-term benefit. And I've found that I refer stuff to my competitors all the time because it's not a fit for my business. And it always comes back to me. They send, people send me other clients back, people send me other gifts, people help me out in other ways, give me, access to their expertise. And it really just is longer term the better way to go.
Yeah, it's just like thinking long term as well. Like, I think there's a guy, I can't remember his name, but he's in the fitness industry. He's got the worst name, V-Shred. You've probably seen him, right?
That's not a
Like,
guy. We can talk about that
or
another time.
that's a corporation, is it?
It's I wouldn't say it's corporation. It's more like of a marketing machine. He's actually a kind of spokesmodel, but there's
Yeah,
a team of about 20 marketers and copywriters behind that guy, like very carefully constructing every word that comes out of his mouth. Very
yeah.
interesting situation.
Like, we could jump into that. That would be interesting. But like, he's like, we'll say that brand.
Hmm.
I was actually talking to a woman during the week, and she was like, "Oh, I signed up with V-Shred," and I'm like, "Oh my God!" And they were trying to get all this money out of me and supplements and everything. there's someone like I interviewed. Have you ever heard of Dan John?
Dan John, no, I don't know who that is.
He's like 67. He's been coaching for like 50 years, and he's
Hmm.
just like just respected by everyone in the industry, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you want. Like I want to be in his direction, not in V Shred's direction. Like everyone hates you, basically. No one will ever, no person in the fitness industry will ever refer to V Shred, but he gets the new people who are unaware and then burns the bridges, burns the bridges, burns the bridges, and so on. But yeah, if you're
Yes.
in an industry from a longevity standpoint, like just referrals, doing good things without expecting returns, like it comes back over time the longer you're in that said industry.
Yes. Hey, look, V-Shred is a kind of a good example because they're widely regarded as kind of a bad actor by people in the fitness industry. But for people like me who are in more specifically inside the marketing industry, you know, let's leave aside the quality of their products and the advice they're giving, which I know is debatable. But
Yep.
as a marketing machine, they are very, very effective at finding people who are, as you said, maybe relative newcomers to health and fitness, giving them a very sexy, seductive message that is easy to swallow, and then selling them on a lot of expensive products and services that may not actually be the thing that that person wants, but sounds really convenient and easy. They're very, very good at that. That's a company. I don't know. I last I heard of them, what you see at V-Shred, that one guy, that Vince, the spokesmodel,
Yeah.
he's the face of what is maybe a 200 million a year company.
Whoa.
Yeah. And but the way their business model, unfortunately, is one that I don't really like, which is get a customer and squeeze that customer for every penny you can possibly get from them as quick as you can. It's a very
Yep.
short-term greedy model. They don't necessarily always have the best. Um, I don't know if there's necessarily a philosophy of service. I want to be careful. I don't want to, go out there and explicitly criticize or say they're doing wrong, but they don't. What they say is not. It may not always have the customer's best interests at heart. So, they get a customer, they can do very well and monetize that customer, make quite a lot of money from a customer fast. But does the customer stay with them for years? My guess would be not always. I would say a lot of customers would probably move on from a while and say this isn't the best fit for my needs. Whereas the other way, the one I prefer generally, is to be long-term greedy. I want to make a lot of money from every customer I do business with by giving them a good service, giving them appropriate advice for their needs, uh, giving them results that they can see and feel happy with, so that they keep on coming back and spending more money. Because the customer who comes to you for weight loss today may want to be competing in sport or doing a bodybuilding show in 2 or 3 years time, or they may just want to be functionally fit for the rest of their life. So if you look after them, give them the results, treat them well, and have a range of products that serve their needs at different stages along their journey, you can keep that customer for many, many years and be very, very profitable just by serving them.
Yeah. Just one last thing on V-Shred. He had the Joe Rogan background. Did you see that?
I saw that. Yeah, it's he doesn't
It's
actually
like
say it, but it looks just like Joe
it looks
Rogan's.
like he's been interviewed by Joe Rogan. Yeah. Yeah.
And without even having to say it, people immediately assume, oh, he was a guest on Rogan, right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so good. Um, okay. So I guess with regards, actually, one question I have on you before we go into the polarizing content,
Yes.
I'd like to talk about maybe ethics as well with marketing.
Yeah.
But I've heard that fitness is one of the hardest industries to sell and market to. Is there any truth in that? Is that something that you've heard of?
Um, I don't know is my answer. I'm not a fitness marketing expert. Some of my friends and colleagues are in fitness marketing, but I have not been a practitioner um, in fitness, because marketing breaks out into so many different sub niches, and I haven't done a lot of work in the fitness industry. I'm aware of some of the bigger names, um, and some of the case studies like we just talked about with like V-Shred, but generally, actually, the resistance to marketing, I don't know. I mean, it's one of the biggest, like the three big marketing verticals are health, wealth, and relationships. And fitness fits squarely into the health category. It actually kind of fits into some of the relationships category because there's a vanity aspect to it where people want to look their best so that they're more appealing in the dating marketplace. Um, but I don't have a huge amount of expertise specifically in fitness marketing. So can I say it's the hardest one? I would say it's probably one of the most competitive because there are so many young people who are into fitness and think, oh, I'd love to become a coach. And they set out on that journey. And so at the maybe at the lower end of the market, there's a huge amount of choice and not necessarily an awful lot of differentiation between different service providers. But yeah, beyond that, I couldn't say. I'm not an expert.
Yeah, I think it's just like the guy who I would have learned a lot from is John Goodman, really smart guy,
Mhm.
brilliant in marketing. You know, he was talking about online training like ten years ago, 12 years ago even. But he was just saying because, you know, usually it needs to be quick and easy. And it's like, oh, yeah, you know, sign up for me and in 12 months you'll feel better. You know, it's like it's not a pill, basically, you know, that you're selling people.
Yeah, okay. I see where you're driving at now. And yeah, I mean, look, when you're marketing about a service rather than a product, and fitness is it's quite intangible. You're selling personal transformation. You're not, the coaching is just a mechanism to get what you want, which is to lose weight, to feel better in your body, to look better, to have a more functional body or a more effective body for doing sport or whatever it is, or again, a more appealing looking body so you can, go out and date more effectively. So the actual mechanism for doing that is you have to go to the gym, you have to work out, you got to count your calories. There's no getting away from this stuff, um, and that's very unpalatable for most people. People generally neglect their health until they have a health scare that tells them, "Hey, I have to start taking this stuff more seriously," and then they're kind of going down this harder journey of trying to get healthy. There's only a minority of people who make health and fitness a priority all of their lives. And usually it takes an event to scare people into making that change. So it is difficult from that. And yeah, people love magic pill solutions. I mean, you know, there's you probably know about Alex Hormozy. He's quite a famous guy
Yeah.
in marketing. And one of the things he's talked about before is he's like, if you look at it from a marketing perspective, like Xanax, the sedative pill, is is actually a much easier thing to sell than meditation. And
Yeah.
both meditation and Xanax have the same effect in the short term, at least, that they make you feel calmer. In the long term, Xanax, obviously, as a pharmaceutical drug, has some potential negative health implications, whereas meditation probably doesn't. But right now, today, if I say, "Do you want to just take this little pill? You're going to feel great in 30 minutes," or I'm going to teach you this skill. It's really hard to learn. It might take years to become good at, but it will long term have be much better for you. You'll probably take the pill most times, and that's the difficult part. I mean, in health and fitness of late, the last couple of years, there's been a lot of talk about glucagon, Ozempic, all these weight loss injectable drugs, where people can just take a shot, changes their dietary habits, it changes their appetite, and they seem to lose weight even without making an effort. Selling people the idea that they have to do personal change work and change their behavior to willpower and discipline, it's unpalatable to most. So the job of marketing oftentimes is to kind of to gild the lily a little bit and make it things sound a little bit easier than they might be in actuality, or just to get someone to be prepared to take that first step or to take a little leap of faith and make some small effort. And yeah, with fitness in particular, it's like there's no getting around it. You've got to show up at the gym, you've got to do the work, you've got to control your eating habits and start to understand your nutrition a little bit. Now, there are ways to simplify. I mean, that's why all these meal prep companies probably do well for a lot of people, because instead of having to learn about nutrition, you can just sign up for a meal prep company, choose the meals you like the taste of. And if you just eat them at the times and intervals they tell you to, then you've got your macros covered, you've got your nutrition bases covered, and that takes out a big part of the uncertainty and complexity of losing weight or getting in shape. But the going to the gym part, well, again, you can simplify it by giving people simple programs that they can do in 30 to 40 minutes instead of spending 2 hours 3 times a week in the gym. So that part will be good. But you have to get people to show up. So there's a level where in marketing, you have to show people the easiest way and make it sound as easy as possible. But there is that ethical line where there isn't a magic pill solution. And unfortunately, in the marketplace, there are always people who are willing to go a little bit harder and more extreme on the claims they'll make. Like sometimes people like VShred may make very extreme claims about
Yeah.
the efficacy of their products and their services. And that makes it very difficult for honest practitioners who really do have their customers' best interests at heart to compete with those extreme claims when they make more like limited and reasonable claims. But again, this is the long game. Somebody will come to you as a, you know, as a good faith practitioner, maybe after they've tried somebody else's more extreme claims and found that those things don't necessarily always match up to reality.
Yeah, I'm rarely the first coach people work with. Like they're like, oh yeah, I've tried like 5 coaches and it just doesn't work. So like my back is wrecked and I've got a serious problem with food. Um
That is a good place to be, Connor. That's a good.
yeah,
I know it's a slower development cycle to bring a customer in, but being the coach who people come to after they got pissed off with their other coach who, you know, pushed them too far, got
yeah.
to put them into a mentally unhealthy place, got them injured, or just, you know, sold them a bill, sold them a pup about what the results they get and didn't deliver. If you're the coach they come to after they've had all those horrible experiences, you can make very limited, honest claims about what they can expect going forward and be able to fulfill on those and have build a lot more trust of people that way too.
Yeah, it's interesting now. I've been kind of reflecting on that. Like I'm coaching now 13 years and it's becoming there's just way less people now, like over 10 years coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's most people are, you know, in their mid-20s, taking selfies, half naked. Like that's the kind of marketing with a lot of coaches.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I've done on the podcast. I'm interviewing people who have 30 years experience, which is really cool. And they're like unicorns in the fitness industry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's definitely a slower route, but I think it's again, you can I don't think you can not muddy your name if you want to be in it long term, if you're looking for all this quick fix stuff with people. Um, I'd like to go into the polarizing content or kind of building your tribe, this kind of us versus them. I see like people like the carnivore community or the vegan community do this really well. Like
Yes.
people are just like, you know, they're so behind that, like it's religious almost. Can you talk about how you help people build that type of maybe cult following or start to, you know, generate that type of ethos with their content?
Okay. So polarizing content is extremely valuable. And you said it's kind of religious. No, it's explicitly religious. It's exactly what we've always done. It's completely the same. It's what humans have always done since our ancestors climbed down out of the trees and came out of the caves. We form tribes, and those tribes are formed around shared belief. And religion being the easiest or the most universal form of shared belief that lets people group themselves together in the broadest context and the biggest numbers. It's explicitly the same thing as religion. This is what, you know, service type marketing does. And yes, these people are building cults, often cults of personality. Sometimes that can be useful if they have um, if they if they have ethical boundaries that they won't go beyond. This can be very useful and effective marketing. It can veer into very dangerous territory and very kind of manipulative territory if people explicitly understand this and push the right buttons. But yeah, it's the same stuff. It's the very same stuff, and there's no point beating around the bush about that. The polarization stuff is extremely valuable because we love as humans to bond over shared enemies. You know, you know, we don't. You and me can meet up and we may not know each other, but if there's a, let's say if there's a football game on and we both support the same team and the team we're watching a game and the team that we both support is playing against is a team that we both dislike, we will very quickly bond over our shared dislike of that other team. You know, the same thing happens, you know, in all around Ireland. I mean, look at the tribalism. My son's a hurler. Look at the
Yeah.
tribalism people have around their local GAA club, around their county. You know, I live in Kilkenny, where it's like, you know, it's beyond
Yeah,
religion. Like,
religion. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you drive down to Ballyhale, where guys like TJ Reid and Henry Shefflin are from down here, and like, it's a hurling is more than a religion down there. It's amazing and it's wonderful, but like clever marketers can use these kind of very strong feelings in a way that does cross the line and become unethical at times. At the same time, it can be extremely valuable. So tribalism, everyone wants to feel like they belong. We all have that experience of feeling like we were kind of not picked or being ostracized or being the odd person out at some point in our lives. And nobody likes that feeling. For as long as humans have existed, belonging to a tribe or a group was what assured our survival. The person who was alone usually didn't last as long, was very vulnerable to attack and death from other tribes. And this is like deep ancestral memory we all have within us. So having that sense of belonging to a group, whether that's your local church, your local GAA club, the football team you support, the music you listen to, the kind of movies you like to watch, you will always, when you meet new people, try to find these points of connection, what are called, what we would call in marketing an affinity bridge. You find this point of affinity. And these things can be really powerful from the good perspective of helping people bond together. And they can also be really dangerous when they're misused by manipulative people or bad actors to make you feel that they have a kinship or affinity with you, which may not be real. It may be just that they're using that. So like a classic one is like, inside of religious communities, there can often be these kinds of financial scams where people get wiped out of their life savings inside of a church group or a particular, faith community. And the reason being is the bad actor is pretending like they believe all the same things as everyone else and wearing the symbols, but they're actually misusing that to actually take advantage of people around them. And people are more likely to generally to be scammed with people that they feel very comfortable with or familiar with or have some point of deep connection with than by a total stranger, because we have a natural suspicion of strangers, of people who look different, who talk different, who act different, who dress different, who are clearly from somewhere that's not where we're from or not what we're about. So these are the reasons why tribalism and polarization is extremely powerful. And you mentioned things like veganism or carnivore, very, very, very powerful things. And if you believe in those things, like if you are a committed vegan, if you're an animal rights activist, and you're also a fitness coach, and you believe in veganism as a nutrition mechanism to help people, stay, get fit and get strong, but stay within the ethical framework of not wanting to eat animals or use animal products, it's perfectly congruent for you to say, hey, this is my line. I don't use animal products. I don't train people who want to use animal products, and that's not part of how I teach fitness. Totally fine to do that. And then there's people who do kind of polarization for polarization's sake, or just as a kind of marketing gimmick. So you mentioned somebody like the Liver King, who for years was doing this very extreme marketing message where he was like featured on camera, like with the cow's liver, eating the raw liver,
Eating
doing all these
testicles.
silly
Yeah.
stunts and stuff like that. And people loved it, and it was fun and it was polarizing, but it kind of went back in his face where later I think there was some documentation published by somebody from one of his medical providers that actually he's been using a lot of steroids for years, which many people had suspected anyway. And he had to kind of come and do this sort of like, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I was wrong. I'm sorry, I'm a changed man now.
Yeah.
He's still looking pretty juicy,
Yeah.
but
But like if he just said, yeah, I'm on gear, like, okay, well, we all know, but thank you for telling us versus like lying, I think that was the issue people had.
it's trust issue. At the same time, you could using this stuff, you don't have to be extremely polarizing. You don't have to be like a liver king. Um, but setting out your values is very powerful way of creating affinity in your marketing. And just to kind of dig into that a little bit more, like saying what you're for and what you're against. So, you've said you're against quick fix solutions. You're against this idea that there's a magic pill to help people get fit. You're against this idea of someone doing an extreme diet now so that they can look good for summer and then they'll bounce back and yo-yo diet and gain 30 pounds in the winter when they fall off this short term. So you can talk about the things and call out the bullshit in your industry and the stuff that's fashionable nonsense that actually doesn't really lead to long-term results. And you can do all of those things ethically. You can say what you're for and what you're against. You can share your values. And that is generally long-term what will bring people to you, is having a position that's consistent over time that people feel like, hey, Connor's not saying something this year that's completely different to what he said last year. He's not just jumping on the latest fads. He's bringing in all these other experts into his podcast of people who've been doing this 30 years and 40 years. So he's showing a path for lifetime fitness instead of selling somebody the 6 week six pack, or the big booty boot camp, or the shredded for summer kind of stuff that tends to be more the gimmicky side of fitness marketing.
Everything you just said there has been so helpful, man. Like, I've just taken tons of notes there for just brainstorming on just the values, getting really clear on that. I'm actually going to do that now over the next day and just brainstorm. That's really helpful. Yeah, even things like Ozempic and
Yes. Now, I missed the core of your question. Sorry. The key thing is, and this is the key thing mistake that everybody makes. I've made it. You may have made it. I'm sure other people listening have made it. When you first become an entrepreneur, like this thing we talked about earlier about wanting to take every customer, you start to say, "Oh well, I can help. You know, I can help pregnant women stay fit during the first and second trimesters on their way to have a baby. I can help people in their 60s and 70s reduce their muscle wastage, and I can help people in their 80s avoid sarcopenia, and I can help teenagers get ready for intercounty GAA trials, and I can do all of these things." No, you cannot. You can't. You just can't. You've got to pick who you're helping. So, give an example. Like, you've probably heard of Tim Grover. He was Michael Jordan's fitness coach for many, many years. He was also Kobe Bryant, the late basketball player's fitness coach for many, many years. He worked with top tier basketball players at the very, very highest level. And his thing was, like, he's giving champions their tiny 0.1% edge that they need to dominate at the very highest level of competition. That's who he served. And that's who all his messaging is around. If you read his books, if you watch him on YouTube, that's who he helps. And he's very clear. Now he's more in the kind of motivational side because he's gone past being active in competitive sport. But his thing is about, like, if you are a top performer, how do you find that last little bit of juice to go further than you believe you can, your capabilities. He's not the guy that you to look to if you're a beginner just trying to lose 20 pounds and get in shape for summer. Tim Grover's not your guy. But if you're already a high level person who's extremely successful and you're just looking to find that next edge, Tim Grover is your guy. Who else could we use in an example? Well, and that's probably, there are many, and I don't want to get too into the weeds, but the idea that you can serve everybody is the thing. Is like, pick your people. Who do you serve? And this can be extremely difficult for entrepreneurs to do. Oh, well, I've helped this type of people, I've helped that type of people. Even recently in my own business, I've been working with multiple different clients and getting some decent results for them, but I've realized I'm actually juggling too many balls and trying to understand too many things at the same time. I need to pick one and narrow down my focus in this new service I'm offering. And I actually have to probably get rid of most of the clients I'm working with now and just stick with one or two and start to find more clients like that one, because that's the way long term you'll deliver the best results. The easiest way for somebody who's got some experience as a fitness coach, for example, will be to look at their customer list over the last 2 years and look at actually their invoicing and say, generally there's an 80-20. Generally, there'll be a handful of clients who've been the biggest buyers of your products and services. And generally, you'll find that your top 4 or 5 clients will have some similarities between them. So you may look at your invoice for the last 2 years of fitness coach and say, actually, you know what? All of those guys who are all the people who were my best clients, they were all men between 40 to 50, and they were all business owners. They were all married. They all had young families. And then it's like, okay, those are my people. Like, your business usually gives you some evidence as to, if you look for us, as to who your best customer is. And then it's like, okay, there's my marketing message. I'm helping, male business owners in their 40s and 50s who have young families to still find time for fitness and give themselves a bit of a mental and physical edge that lets them perform, lets them be great dads and have lots of energy and actually do a great job in their business, be successful in every dimension of life. Perfect. So your business that you've already got will give you clues how to go. But when you try to appeal to everybody, you generally end up being bland and appealing to nobody. So more than explicitly being polarizing, it's just figuring out, who do you serve, who is the best fit for your business model, and then tailoring all of your messaging to solving those people's problems, because they have very, very different, like, the business owner, the male business owner in his 40s who's got 2 kids in primary school and is working 50, 60 hours a week and is still trying to maintain a good relationship with his wife and be there for his kids. Very different set of problems than the 21-year-old guy who's looking to get in shape for a bodybuilding show. Very different set of problems to a 31-year-old woman who's about to have her first baby in 7 months' time and wants to maintain her health and fitness, but doesn't want to actually put herself at risk of injury during that very important period of her life too. So all of these things, it's just finding out who you serve, talking explicitly to them. By doing that, you naturally attract that type of person. And it's not that you push away other types of people, but the message is not relevant to them. And that's how you can do this kind of very specific values-based messaging, which is in one sense polarizing, but without having to always be seeking controversy or looking to say something outrageous.
Yeah, this is really helpful. This I find this is, for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's the hardest part of like really niching down. That's actually something I maybe you can touch on, is like a few guys I follow now, like Justin Welch.
Yes.
He's great. Like and Nicholas Cole, I don't know if you know him, Ship 30, really, really smart guys. Digital writing is what they do.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about like creating your own niche, or like a niche within a niche. Do you do anything like that, or do you have any like recommendations with that? And I guess it touches on the blue ocean versus red ocean philosophy. So you're kind of out by yourself. There's no one actually competing with you because you're completely different.
Okay. This blue ocean, red ocean idea, I don't know if I 100% agree with it. I mean, I don't necessarily think that red oceans are bad. People think, oh, I need to find something that's unique where there's not a lot of competition. But it's like, well, the competition is where the money is. You get in a
Mm.
boat and go fishing, and this metaphor you can use the same metaphor. You get in a boat to go fishing. Do you really want to go to the place where there's no other fishing boats? Well, there's no other fishing boats. You know why? Because there's no bloody fish there. The place where all the fishing boats are is where the fish are. So you've just got to deal with it. Competition is part of business. Where there is a lot of competition, that's where there's a lot of money and opportunity. You just have to have better, basically you have to have better lures on your lines than the other fishing boat does. And that may mean
Mm.
more specific messaging. It may mean, the longevity over time. There are lots of little things you can do that make you more effective. So, you as a fitness coach, and I don't know how much video content you capture from your existing clients, and you should be thinking about that. It's like, hey, when I take on a new client, I should be doing an intake interview with them, talking with them, it's not just the before after pictures, which is the standard thing, but it's like, I want to interview this person when I come do a 5 to 10 minute video interview, and then talk with them about what, where are they at, what are their problems, what are their challenges, what are their needs, what are their goals, and then document that whole journey. And then when they get to a level where they achieve a goal, it's like doing that interview again. And it's like, hey, talk about the journey to get to that goal. Whether somebody comes to you, hasn't never set foot in a gym before and suddenly realizes, actually, I need to take this seriously, or somebody who used to be really fit but has let their weight creep up over time and has neglected their health and wants to get back to how they were in the past. Doing these things like documenting on video and constantly putting it out there, just being more thorough about your process of documenting the journey is enough to differentiate you from most people who will do the bare minimum effort of just taking a before after photo of the client. So it doesn't have to be something really complicated. It can just, usually the people who do the basic stuff, the fundamentals consistently and well, are the people who tend to have the best results. So, I really like Justin Welch's stuff, and he's really an interesting, maybe not everybody will know who he is, but what did he do? I mean, he sold a course about how to write for social media and was very successful with it. And his thing is very broad market, so it's almost anybody, but he specifically focused on writing well for LinkedIn to increase your professional standing and become sort of a known authority in business using LinkedIn. So he focused on one platform. He didn't say, I'm for Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all this. No, this is to help you with LinkedIn. And then one other interesting thing he did was he focused on time efficiency in his products. He said, there's so
Mm.
many courses out there you can buy that are, cost 500 or $1,000, and they're 20 hours long. And it's not just the money you're paying, it's actually the time. And he's like, so he sold his course at a relatively low price point, but his thing was like, it's not just that my course costs less, it's that it's more effective. You can do it in 2 hours, because I don't want to spend 20 hours myself as a learner learning a new skill. I'd rather have the fundamentals in two and then just develop the skill through practice. And that's what he's selling. So he's like, just do my 2 hour course instead of that other 20-hour course. You can get most of what you need to know, and you can get started faster and see results quicker. And that was just a simple little difference, but it made all the difference for him in growing quite a big personal brand and a very successful business.
Yeah, man. It's really cool just talking to people who know their stuff in every industry, because you just said, you just basically said, like, it's just doing the fundamentals really well, because I could see myself like going down a rabbit hole of trying to find like a unique niche, or, separating myself. But like, it's kind of like someone asking, well, what's the best supplement? And it's like, well, are you going to the gym 3 times a week and planning your food and doing that? And it's like, do that consistently, and that's probably going to look after most of the issues, which is what you're saying about marketing, which is what basically every industry tends to say, is like, there's fundamentals, do them consistently over time, you'll get results.
Yeah, this is the truth.
Yeah.
Marketing. Marketing is kind of, when you're online, if you're trying to promote a business online, everything becomes about marketing. And marketing is all, marketing tactics for online business. A lot of it just revolves in this idea of secrets. But the problem is that when you look at people who are successful, and look, short term, there are lots of, you know, spurious strategies. There are lots of less than ethical things you can do to make really good money, a lot of money, quick. But they don't necessarily give you longevity. You can easily burn reputation. In the long term, there really are no secrets except, being on focusing on getting good at the fundamentals of whatever it is that you do, um, having a set of clear values that are the ones you live by, and sticking to those. And over time, doesn't mean you can't change. Sometimes you'll have, new information. Sometimes something will happen in your life, you start to see things a different way. But just having a clear set of values, again, longevity over time, and just persistence. Just keep doing it. Like you said, you talk to a guy who's been in the business 30 years, there's hardly any guys like that around. Very few people stick around for the long haul. Once you've been in business for a few years, you naturally become an authority just by fact that virtue of the fact you've been around for a while. And people, once you also do the work to actually promote yourself, have your voice heard, and put yourself out there, people naturally will gravitate to that authority and listen to you, and you'll be respected by your peers. And that then reflects in how you present yourself to the rest of the world as an expert, as a go-to person in your industry, and somebody that even somebody who's coming in new and fresh should probably go and listen to, because you've been around, you've done all the things, and you're still there. You've survived. Just surviving by itself sort of says good things about a person in the long term.
Yeah, it's so it's literally, just as you were saying that, I started salsa dancing in January, but I started Latin dancing last year, so like almost a year and a half now. And have you ever danced before or done like partner dancing?
No.
It's like, in Latin dance, the man leads, so it's
Yes.
really, it's like the most stressful thing I think I've ever done, because like, you're doing this new thing that you're really bad at, and there's a lot of times it's a beautiful woman looking at you being like, what are you doing, so it's very confronting. You're like, oh my God, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
And so it was really hard at the start, but I would always ask everyone who danced, guys or girls, but it was the same thing. Just the number one message everyone said is, oh, just don't stop dancing. Like, that's how you get good.
Just stick around for a while, and
Yeah.
you'll inevitably develop some competence. It's not a very sexy message. It's not a magic
No.
solution, but it's the basic truth that underpins every human skill.
Exactly. Man, I think that's a great way to end, but that was such an enjoyable conversation. Where can people learn more about you? I know you're active on Facebook, but where can we link you in the show notes?
I have a mailing list which I can give you a link to, although I'm
Yep.
not very good about mailing my list. You know, I as a marketer, it's a real mark of shame, but I don't mail.
Yeah.
The fact is like social media has just become so powerful. The immediacy you get off it, somewhat like pretty much all my business for the last 5 years has come through Facebook. So the best really way to
Oh,
connect with me is through Facebook, because that's where I tend to publish my content first, simply because that's where it puts, you know, Mark Zuckerberg pays all my bills. He's been putting money in my pocket for years, and inevitably that my attention goes where the money flows. Um, I do have a YouTube channel where I publish my own podcast interviews every week. I also have a website for my business, but that's more about like lead generation. So I do help local business with lead generation advertising and developing their own sales strategies and funnels. That's called firedigitalmarketing.com. They can find me there, but primarily Facebook is the best way to link up with me, and that's where you can sort of find out what I've got to talk about, and listen to some of my nonsense daily if you want to.
awesome, my man. Really good to connect. All right.
Okay, thanks so much, Connor.